question that beckons is, what role will green hydrogen play, ladies and gentlemen, in driving India's journey towards becoming a net zero economy, Amita? And our next session focuses on that very topic, India's green hydrogen dream, a billion-dollar path to net zero by the year 2030.
Absolutely. Taking that aim forward, we are privileged to have our distinguished guests with us to shed more light on this very subject. So join your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming Surbhi Goyal, the Senior Energy Specialist, World Bank. Ms. Goyal, who has been recognized as one of Asia's most influential women in renewable energy. And we also have Dr. Manish Kumar Shrivastava, who is the Associate Director of Earth Science and Climate Change Division at TERI, which is the Energy and Resources Institute. And to moderate this discussion, I would like to call on stage my colleague and Times Network's Sneha Koshi. Sneha, please do come up on stage.
Sneha, we welcome you back to the platform here at the inaugural India Climate Summit. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's kick it off. Sneha, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening. As Ricky Skate said, there's no time to turn back. This is our moment. Thank you very much, all of you, for paying attention. It's a heavy topic. It's a very heavy topic, and we all have had a very heavy lunch. So I think it's very important, and this is what people mostly ask. How do we relate to it? Let's look at the power demand. Let's look at the water crisis. And all of this is somewhere connected to green hydrogen, because you can't develop, produce green hydrogen in isolation. Collaboration is the buzzword. Ms. Surbhi Goyal, if I can just start with you, where India is, the big dream, the big target that it has kept in front of it. The buzzword really, even as the focus is on green hydrogen and the climate crisis, is collaboration. One, collaborating with different forms of renewable energy, green energy, vis-a-vis for the production of green hydrogen, and then you have collaboration with countries. No country can do this alone. Please take us through how are you looking at India spearheading this move?
Yeah, sure, thank you. So this is a very complex question, and the time we have probably may not do justice to it. But in short, I think there are collaborations required at multiple levels. First, as you rightly mentioned, that it's not limited to only one sector. Renewable energy, when we looked at it, it still had some kind of, project boundaries. You have MNRE, MOP to some extent. But when we talk about green hydrogen, the applications are very many. We have steel, refineries, fertilizers, and a lot of such industries are coming into the folds like MORTH and others. So the first and foremost thing which I think government has done is to have an empowered group which has representatives from all the ministries is very critical. Now how this works at the project level, we are working very closely with MNRE being the nodal agency for this particular mission. Last year we had provided $1.5 billion to enhance and deepen the policy and regulatory ecosystem for green hydrogen production and for its uptake. And hopefully in a couple of days, today another 1.5 billion is going to the board. In next 2 days you will hear about it, hopefully by tomorrow itself. So it's a $3 billion support that we have provided, and the critical part there was to enhance all these kind of measures. And we have been working very closely with MNRE to see that how the collaboration can be extended. And we have seen that they are working at the ground levels with all the possible entities and agencies, including regulators, so that no stone is left unturned. And we are supporting them in this particular agenda. Beyond that, I think the partnerships across the globe with other countries are equally important. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but in COP27, World Bank launched Hydrogen for Partnership with at the global platform. And this particular partnership is looking at how we can bring together various countries, how we can collaborate in terms of the knowledge exchange, how we can raise financing for the projects, what kind of socio-economic challenges are likely to come up, and how we can learn from each other's experiences rather than failing and then, undoing some of the works and redoing it. So all these these things are very critical when we are looking at the bank's engagement. In my role and what we have done in India, I would say that India is one of the most progressive countries in terms of the adoption of green hydrogen mission. Other developing countries are almost at par, if not ahead. And in that context, what we are doing, that we are actually from India, from the bank team, advising the various other countries' governments. We have had brainstorming sessions and knowledge exchange sessions with Turkey, with Brazil, with Chile, and a couple of more are lined up. So this is how we are trying to, encourage.
That's interesting. But Dr. Manish Kumar Shrivastava, now, those of us living in Delhi would perhaps know the best what polluted air really means. And green hydrogen, for that matter, is believed to leave no residue in the air. That being one. But, there's this dialogue, paisa bolta hai. Per kg production is somewhere around 300 to 400 rupees per kg, if I'm correct. This is what I read. This is what I've been told by some people. But if it's so expensive, how do you look at the necessity of green hydrogen vis-a-vis the practicality of it?
Well, it's an interesting question that ultimately we are talking about a technological transition, right? Bringing in new technological option in the energy mix and how we industrialize. So I would say that this is a long-term vision. Yes, there is a target for 2030, but the real goal is 2070 when we are looking at the net zero target. And it is in that context the importance of hydrogen is important. And if we look at the cost question with that longer time horizon, then we are actually hoping and aiming that that cost would come down when we need it the most.
Economies
right?
of scale.
So it's economies of the scale, and with time, technologies also get mature. You learn a lot. Your learning curve is higher with time. And usually it's if you look at the different technologies that come in new and then mature, the time frame is somewhere between 30 to 60 years. So I think that's the background understanding. The issue here is we need hydrogen primarily in climate change context to decarbonize the hard-to-abate sector, particularly steel and cement, where renewable energy is not an option because the amount of heat, at least right now, no scientist is saying things may change 20 years down the line.
Like it has in the last 20
right?
years.
So, because the amount of heat required in those sectors, you can't produce with electricity or renewable energy. So you would need a substitute for coal or gas eventually. Right. So yes, it is expensive right now. India is hoping that to reduce it to 80 rupees per kg by 2030 hopefully. But that depends on how at what scale you are able to demonstrate and invest how quickly and what is the learning curve. It's still hopeful ambition till 2030. But I think one always have to keep in mind that this is a long game.
Okay.
May I add one more point
please,
to it?
Please.
So I think there are these pockets of demand coming up, which, these customers are asking for green products and they are willing to pay premium. And some of these pockets are essentially being driven by, say, external factors like CBAM being introduced in Europe and all. And even India, if you look at, many of the customers want to go and transition to green. So these pockets of demand are asking, and this is where the economies of scale will start to build in.
In fact, Ms. Surbhi Goyal, to what you're saying, let me just take it to another level. One of the buzzwords we seem to come across a lot are startups, especially in this sector. Why is it mushrooming so much? Is it because the government is giving a push for it? Is it because it is being spoken about globally so much? Or is it sheer relevance? And how much of this really sees a startup go into its fulfillment? Having an idea, starting off is very different. And then to see a completion, because at the end of the day, every startup needs to reach the next level. Have we seen that kind of growth in this sector?
So in terms of the startups, I would say that, it is going to be a big industry very soon. It's already starting. We are seeing a lot of investments flocking in, but majority of the investments at the moment are coming from the big investors because they have deep pockets, they have big balance sheets to absorb certain risks. For the startups, I have been like interacting with some of the people and see that they are sitting by the edge waiting for the right time for them to come and enter the space. And there are a lot of, R&D required for them to get into this space because what is the value addition? For any startup, the problem is that what is that idea which is not being pursued by others? And that would come essentially from R&D and a lot of innovative thinking that would come, during the process. So,
But is the money there in the market? If there
at
are
the
people
moment,
who want
I
to
would
start
say the
off,
risks are higher. Risks are much higher for the startups to enter. So once that market settles in, the policy regulatory system starts to settle in, then it would be right time for them. At the moment, they're more towards RE, batteries, and a lot of other newer things which are now settling in. But green hydrogen, again, they're sitting by the fence, very eager to enter, but still not yet fully sure if this is the right time for them
is
to
it
enter.
because of the practicality of it?
Yeah, because there are a lot of technological risks associated. The financing at the moment is very expensive, not available even to the larger business houses, leave the startups, right? Then MSME sector itself needs a bit of a push. They themselves are not able to access the financing to the levels that are required in other sectors. So a lot of challenges which are related to MSMEs persist. On top of it, technological risks and policy regulatory risks around these smaller investments to come in.
Okay, Dr. Amit Shrivastava, minimum government is good, is what many people say. Let the government be where the government needs to be. But then you have areas such as these that are extremely grey, hugely important, very futuristic, but possibly needs a lot of monitoring. As a policy person yourself, as a research person yourself, when you look at green hydrogen today and where you look at India today, the climate change that's happening, how do you look at green hydrogen? What would you tell everybody sitting here, the government sitting here? What policy is working, is not working, if you are asked?
Well, I think it's too early to say on green hydrogen what policies are working or not working. I mean, the green hydrogen mission is a big push to promote green hydrogen. There is parallel support for promoting renewable energy. I think when India had its solar mission, there were the target was just 20 gigawatt, but we see that within the same time the target was revised. So you really have to go with that degree of unpredictability, that what is going to be the learning curve, how industry is going to respond to different government policies. But I think the future for green hydrogen in India is very bright. One thing which is kind of unusual in Indian history about green hydrogen as a technology is that for the first time you have more private commitment on taking risk on a technology than the government.
That's interesting. And why?
Well, I think the private sector has also realized that there is going to be a probably bigger global and regional market for energy and for hydrogen as a substitute to coal. And also, these players are also themselves large consumers of coal. So they are looking at, changing their own supply chain, their own production processes. And these are also, interestingly, if you look at this, the structure of the private players who have pledged on green hydrogen, they are reasonably vertically as well as horizontally integrated. So they have much bigger flexibility to absorb the risks and costs. I think that's interesting.
Dr. Amit, just out of curiosity, now you need large amounts of water for production of green hydrogen. You need low-cost power supply, low-cost electricity for production of green hydrogen. Both of these are hugely scarce. We are in Delhi where we are seeing water scarcity. We are in Bengaluru where we are seeing water scarcity. Power consumption is all-time high. So you said this is a long-term dream. But I think a point to be driven is it's not in isolation. You cannot achieve the green hydrogen dream or the decarbonization dream in isolation. How critical is this factor?
I think it is very important. I think Surbhi said in her opening statement that, you have to bring in different ministries together. And I also feel that, these trade-offs are anyways part of the development strategy, and one has to be aware of those trade-offs, and one has to think about how to deal with them. For example, yes, water has always been a major, water and land actually are two scarce resources that our green energy transition will have to deal with in any ways. But at least in case of water, there is a scope of greater scope of circularity, bringing in circular economy in water uses. If we act, of course, we have to be more aggressive about it, more alert about it. So there, those things have to come parallelly. Similarly, on cheap power, I think now we are at a stage where solar plus storage is more likely to be competitive with traditional power. There are few demonstration projects coming up, and hopefully in next 5 years that would be the norm. Looking at the trend of the price decline in solar, overall system cost decline. But yes, we would still need to have a compatible grid, which is a huge grid, and I think that's where Surbhi and her colleagues can play a very important role.
Do you want to take that? I mean,
Yeah, of course.
I'll just add to this as well. There's a huge gap between citizens and between researchers, between innovators when it comes to green hydrogen. And how does the World Bank, how do these monetary agencies look at that gap?
Yeah, so let me just quickly respond to what my colleague from TERI just mentioned. So we actually had developed a geospatial mapping tool alongside TERI actually to map more than 25 parameters, and one was on the water levels. So that when you are looking at that tool, you get to know that which are those areas which are going to go water scarce, because you do not want to put your funds somewhere which after 10 years are likely to go dry, right? Because hydrogen is the main water is your main feedstock for the hydrogen production. So this is what, we had done. We are trying to put it in the public domain, but being, we need the blessings from the government to do so. But however, we have introduced the outcomes of that into the draft of the Green Hydrogen Hub policy that we helped Government of India to prepare. The shape and form in which it has come, it's little more different from what we had proposed, but it had included at least the aspects around desalination plants, and hence we are seeing a lot of investments coming around ports. So desalination has its own connotations, pros and cons, which we are studying that how it could be made in a more environmental friendly manner. But these are the interventions we are very much acknowledging, and we know that water is going to be very important. Another thing is that the empowered group does not include Ministry of Water Resources, unfortunately. So we have been harping to government that please, consider them, and they're, yeah. So let's see. So that was on that. But bridging the gap between the researchers and the common man and the government and the various, financiers, I think it's all about sensitization. Leave apart the common man or, the layman who would understand it. When you go to the financial intermediaries, you ask for a financing. They are putting a risk premium because the technology is not yet demonstrated in the country.
That's
so
true.
This is where the role of the multilaterals like World Bank come in, that we pitch in with the first demonstration projects, absorb the first mover risks, sensitize the people about it, what this technology is, the lessons learned can be incorporated in the next investment, and hence gradually bridging the gap. In effect, R&D of course is happening, but there is not enough funds that are being generally given to R&D. And unless and until you have R&D, you can't connect to the ground people, because these people, the people at the lowest level, has the brilliant ideas, and unless we give them the seed money, they can't come out, right, and can't be, I would say, commercialized. So there is where we really need and to involve educational institutions. The skill sets, very important. Education.
Do we have our premier institutions invested in this?
So we are working with, actually we were working with Skill Council for Green Jobs and came up with 5 different new job profiles, but the job profiles are very many. We had some part of money that we used for developing it, and we we will continue to do it as we have more funds available. But
Okay.
yes, that is one of the thrust areas of the government. But also educational institutions, I think how you develop the new generation, make them aware, very important.
Right, Dr. Amit, do you want to just put India vis-a-vis green hydrogen in the global light? I mean, what's happening in other countries, like Ms. Surbhi Goyal said, that we are not seeing the direct output right now, but is that the global scenario, or is it different in the West or in other countries? I mean, I'm trying to understand the picture in India vis-a-vis other countries.
I think on green hydrogen, things are more or less at the same level in different countries. So you have the green hydrogen mission in India, in countries like Sweden, or Germany, Austria, South Korea. They all have been supporting, governments are taking lead in supporting demonstration projects or the early research. So I think everybody is looking at the future of green hydrogen. They are betting on it. But yes, on certain aspects related to hydrogen, for example, some what we call the horizon technologies, which are at very low level of TRL, there the use of hydrogen, which can add to its demand and its commercial viability, that is an area where we are not really going, because by and large our R&D landscape is fairly small.
Right. Well, Dr. Manish Kumar Shrivastava, as well as Ms. Surbhi Goyal, thank you very much for joining us, for giving us a very quick, short insight into something which is a very, very complex topic. Thank you very much for breaking this down.
All right.
Thank you.
That made for a lovely back and forth. Thank you, Sneha. And we ask that you please present each of our esteemed panelists with a plantation certificate course, which is symbolic of the trees that we have planted in their name. A very special initiative by the Times Network and Sankalp Patru Foundation.
Let's keep the applause going, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. And next we bring you a deeply inspiring session that serves as a testament to the fact that age is no barrier when it comes to making a profound impact.